I'd like to welcome Mr. Peter Madden, who's representing the Christian Democratic Party of Australia, to address you today. Thank you.
All I can say is fantastic. You should be giving yourselves a hand because you've come out to make a stand for democracy. You've come out to make a stand for love and unity and Christianity. I want to say that I take my hat off to you. And you know, as I look around this crowd, I think some of these precious young children, some of these precious young girls and boys might well have stayed in Egypt, and as we look around we might have seen, excuse me sir, thank you, okay, as I look around at these precious young boys and girls, I think, what if they had stayed in Egypt? What if they had have been in the same danger? We live in a country that is very secure and a country that is very safe. And we love that. We keep our democracy very intact. You know what this is happening in Egypt is about democracy. There has been, in actual fact, excuse my distraction, there has been a great breakthrough with the revolution in Egypt. The world is applauding democracy. The world is applauding a people rising up to say we want rights and we want a democracy in Egypt. But what we've seen is a turnaround because there are those who would oppose democracy. I stand here for the Christian Democratic Party in a Christian democratic nation. Our nation was founded upon the Judeo-Christian ethic, and therefore it has given rise to democracy. The only way democracy can go forward is if we love one another, if we accept one another, if we work together in unity. But we must stand in unity to say, as the nations of the world, as you said today, enough is enough. Egypt deserves its chance. Egypt deserves democracy. Can I hear somebody say, Egypt deserves democracy? Egypt deserves democracy. And what we see here, even after the revolution, Article 2 of the Egyptian constitution has not been changed. Nobody is prepared to change the Sharia law that puts in place the right to persecute Christians. And we want to send a message to not only Egypt, but to the Middle Eastern nations that are starting to get a taste for democracy, that Sharia law is not acceptable. It is not acceptable to persecute. It is not acceptable to do violence to those who don't agree with you. It is not acceptable to rape. It is not acceptable to beat women. That is the only way that you will see democracy in Egypt. But I want to talk about Australia as well. We have a responsibility. We are a democratic nation based on Christian principles. We have a responsibility, as has been said earlier, to stand up and be counted. So many of my countrymen, so many of the people that have grown up with me, they haven't tasted what you have tasted. They haven't tasted bloodshed. They haven't tasted their relatives being killed or the relatives being raped. You've tasted it. What I admire about this gathering is that you bring a depth into our nation because you've experienced the pain. In so many ways, unfortunately, our younger generation in Australia is shallow. They don't understand the pain of martyrdom. They don't understand the pain of having their relatives persecuted and killed as you do. And I want to say to you, keep talking, keep standing up, keep speaking out for democracy, because we need you in Australia. We need your depth. And I also want to say, I understand the depth of pain that I see in some of the faces out there. And you are to never lose touch with what is happening in Egypt and the Middle East. You never lose touch, even though you live in a safe country. And as you come out to stand on behalf of those brothers and sisters in Egypt. What you're doing is you're waking up Australia to understand that we're on an island. We're not just someplace separated from the rest of the world. What we are is we are a responsible nation to speak into the tyranny of the earth. I also want to talk about, briefly, intimidation. In the 7th century, when Islam took over Egypt, it was a very small army, as most of you knew, but they came in violently and intimidating. And they intimidated a nation into bowing the knee. And to this day, there are lots of good Muslim people who are peaceful people. I was in Egypt last September, October. I was in Garbage City. I saw the tyranny of people left to live like refugees in their own land. And I saw an intimidation. But in Australia, we don't bow to intimidation. In Australia, we don't bow to what those who would seek to intimidate would do. And I would say to you the same thing. In this day and age, there is a small minority in Egypt that are trying to intimidate the rest of the nation into bowing the knee to Sharia law. This has ramifications all around the world. Just this week, we've said no to Sharia law going any further than halal food and Sharia finance. I applaud. Amen. I applaud the Governor General that he said, no, we're not going to have any more Sharia law in Australia. I wish there was more Australians here besides Coptic Australians to say no Sharia law in Australia. We've got detention centres full of, guess what? Muslims fleeing lands because of tyranny. Every major war on the earth today is based in Islam. Nearly every terrorist act is based in Islam. And what we have here is a classic clash of worldviews. And I want to say, that Australia is a Christian democratic nation. So I would stand here on behalf of the Reverend Fred Nile, who unfortunately was in hospital this week. And I know he has been here at every one of your rallies. And I know he wishes that he were here. But I stand for the Christian Democratic Party. And I declare that this is a Christian democratic nation.